Listen carefully, because if you're hearing this right now, something extremely rare is happening in your timeline. This is not just another video. This is not random, and you did not accidentally click on this. There are moments, very precise, almost invisible moments, where reality itself bends just enough for a message to reach the right person at the exact right time. And today, that person is you. What you're about to hear is known as the emerald signal, a frequency, a pattern of awareness that does not repeat. It doesn't show up twice. It doesn't wait, and it never returns to the same timeline once it's activated. Most people will scroll past this. Most people will never even notice it. But you did. Which means one of two things. Either this is just another video, or your reality is already shifting, and this message is the confirmation. Because there's something you need to understand before we go any further. You are not chasing your desires anymore. Your desires are beginning to align toward you, but only if you can recognize the signal, and right now it's active. Before we go deeper, take 1 second if you feel even a slight pull, like something here is meant for you. Then go ahead and subscribe, like this video, and comment below. And I want you to do something specific. Comment, "I received the signal," and tell me which part of the United States you're watching from. Because location matters more than you think, and we'll get into that soon. Now let's begin. There's a concept in quantum physics that most people misunderstand. They believe reality is fixed, solid, predictable. But at the deepest level, reality behaves very differently. Everything you see around you, your phone, your body, your environment, is not actually solid. It's made up of vibrating energy fields, possibilities, probabilities. Nothing becomes real until it is observed. This is called the observer effect. And this is where everything changes. Because if observation creates reality, then awareness is not passive. Awareness is creative. Now think about this for a second. Out of billions of pieces of content online, out of millions of videos you could have clicked, you are here. Why? It's not random. In quantum theory, there's something known as alignment collapse. This is the moment when one possibility out of infinite outcomes becomes your experienced reality. And that collapse only happens when your internal state matches a specific frequency. So the real question is, what inside of you matched this message? Because something did. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was frustration. Maybe it was a deep, quiet knowing that there's more to life than what you've been experiencing. Whatever it was, it created a match. And that match pulled this message into your awareness. This is how manifestation actually begins, not by forcing, not by chasing, but by aligning. Most people are taught to go after what they want, push more, struggle longer. But that approach comes from a misunderstanding of reality. Because if everything is energy, then force is not the answer. Frequency is. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are in resonance with. That's why two people can take the same actions and get completely different results. One operates from scarcity. The other operates from certainty. One doubts. The other knows. And reality responds accordingly. Now here's where it gets deeper. There is a version of you right now in another timeline who already has everything you want. That version of you is not separate. It's not distant. It's not unreachable. It exists as a quantum possibility. And the only difference between you and that version is frequency. The emerald signal is not just a metaphor. It represents a state of coherence. A moment when your thoughts, emotions, and expectations align so precisely that reality begins to reorganize itself around you. This is not magic. This is physics. But most people never reach this state because they are constantly interrupting their own signal. They think something, then doubt it. They feel something, then question it. They set an intention, then contradict it with fear. This creates noise, and noise blocks alignment. So the first lesson you need to understand is this: clarity amplifies manifestation. Contradiction delays it. If you want reality to respond to you, you must become consistent. Not perfect, but consistent. Consistent in belief, consistent in expectation, consistent in emotional state. Because emotion is not just a feeling, it's a frequency carrier. When you feel something deeply, you are broadcasting a signal into the quantum field, and the field responds not to your words, but to your state. That's why visualization works, but only when it's felt. That's why affirmations fail when they're empty. And that's why moments like this matter. Because right now you are not just listening, you are tuning. And if you stay with this, If you allow yourself to fully engage, something subtle will begin to shift. You may not see it immediately, but you'll feel it. A sense of calm certainty, a quiet confidence, an inner knowing that something is changing. That's the signal stabilizing. And once it stabilizes, things start moving. Opportunities appear. Connections align. Ideas flow effortlessly, not because you forced them, but because you matched them. There's a reason this is called a one-time signal. Not because the information disappears, but because you won't be the same version of yourself after this. And once you change, the same message no longer hits the same way. This is one of the most overlooked truths in manifestation. You don't repeat breakthroughs. You evolve past them. Think about your life. There were moments, specific moments, that changed everything. A realization, a decision, a shift in perspective. After that moment, you couldn't go back to thinking the same way again. Even if you tried, that's because awareness is irreversible. Once you see something clearly, it becomes part of you. And that's exactly what's happening right now. You are being introduced to a higher level of awareness about how reality works. And once this integrates, your entire approach to life changes. You stop chasing, you start allowing, you stop doubting, you start trusting. But here's the part most people mistrust is not blind. It's built through understanding. When you understand how reality actually responds to you, you no longer need constant reassurance. You begin to operate differently. Instead of asking, "Will this work?" you start asking, "Am I aligned with it?" Because alignment is the only thing that matters. Let's break this down deeper. There are 3 layers to manifestation. Thought, emotion, identity. Most people try to change their thoughts. They repeat affirmations. They visualize outcomes. They try to think positive. But thoughts alone are weak signals. Emotion strengthens the signal. Identity locks it in. If your identity does not match what you're trying to manifest, it will always feel out of reach. For example, if you're trying to attract abundance, but deep down you see yourself as someone who struggles, that identity overrides everything. This is why real transformation happens at the identity level. And this is where the emerald signal becomes powerful. Because it's not just giving you information, it's inviting you to shift who you believe you are. Not someday. Not in the future. Now. Because the truth is, you don't become successful and then believe in yourself. You believe in yourself, and then success becomes inevitable. You don't attract love and then feel worthy. You feel worthy, and then love aligns with you. Everything works in reverse. And once you understand this, you stop waiting. You stop delaying your own transformation. You start embodying it. Now here's something even deeper. Time is not linear the way you think. Past, present, and future are not separate. They are interconnected, which means the version of you that already has what you want is influencing you right now. Through intuition, through ideas, through impulses. That random urge to watch this video, that wasn't random. That was alignment. That was your future self pulling you toward a higher state. And the more you listen to that pull, the stronger it becomes. This is how timelines shift, not through force but through resonance. And once you shift timelines, your external world has no choice but to reflect it. That's why this message won't appear again in the same way. Because after this you have a choice. You can ignore the signal, or you can follow it. But either way, something has already changed. You've seen a deeper layer of reality. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So the question is not, will this work? The question is, what version of me am I choosing to become after this moment? Because that choice is where everything begins. Perfect. Now we go deeper. These next shift from awareness into activation and embodiment. Stay focused, because this is where most people either level up or fall back into old patterns. There comes a moment in every real transformation where the entire dynamic flips. Up until now, most of your life has probably felt like pursuit. Chasing opportunities. Chasing money. Chasing recognition. Chasing the feeling that you've finally made it. And maybe sometimes you got close, maybe you even touched it for a moment, but it never felt stable. It never stayed. That's because chasing is rooted in separation. The moment you chase something, you are unconsciously confirming that it is not yours yet. And reality responds to that signal instantly, not to punish you, but to remain consistent with your identity. Because in the quantum field, consistency is everything. So if your internal state says, "I don't have it yet," the external world must reflect that. This is why effort alone doesn't guarantee results. Because effort without alignment creates resistance. Now here's where the inversion happens. At a certain level of awareness you stop chasing. Not because you give up, but because you realize something deeper. What you desire is also seeking expression through you. Think about that carefully. The life you want, the success you imagine, the version of yourself you dream about. Those are not random ideas. They are signals. They exist because they are already available within the field of possibility. And more importantly, they are compatible with you. You don't imagine things that are completely out of your energetic range. You imagine what is reachable, but not yet embodied. That's the gap. Not between you and the desire, but between your current identity and your expanded identity. So instead of asking, how do I get this? The real question becomes, what version of me already has this, and how do I align with that version? Because the moment alignment begins, attraction reverses. This is when things start to feel different. You stop forcing conversations and suddenly the right people reach out. You stop overthinking opportunities and suddenly doors open naturally. You stop trying to prove yourself and suddenly you are recognized without effort. From the outside it looks like luck, but from the inside it feels like flow. This is the state where desires begin to chase you. But here's the part no one tells you. This only happens when attachment dissolves. Not desire. Attachment. Desire is natural. It's creative. It's expansive. But attachment creates pressure. It says, I need this to happen or I'm not complete. And that signal blocks alignment, because now you're operating from lack again. So the goal is not to eliminate desire, it's to remove dependency. You can want something deeply, while still feeling whole without it. That's power. Because when you reach that state, you become magnetic. You're no longer trying to extract something from reality. You're allowing reality to respond to you. And this is where most people get confused. They think letting go means giving up. It doesn't. Letting go means trusting. Trusting that once the signal is clear, the response is inevitable. Now let's make this practical. There are 3 shifts you need to make to activate this inversion. First, shift from outcome focus to identity focus. Instead of obsessing over what you want, focus on who you are becoming, because identity stabilizes reality. Second, regulate your emotional state, not by suppressing negative emotions, but by becoming aware of them without letting them define you. Your emotions are feedback, not commands. And third, act from alignment, not desperation. This is subtle but powerful. The same action can either attract or repel depending on the energy behind it. Sending a message from confidence feels different than sending it from need. Taking a risk from excitement feels different than doing it from fear. And reality reads that difference perfectly. So before you act, check your state, not your plan. Because your state determines your signal. And your signal determines your outcome. Now here's something even deeper. When you truly enter alignment, time begins to compress. Things that used to take months happen in days. Things that felt impossible become natural. Not because time changed, but because resistance decreased. You're no longer delaying your own manifestations with doubt, fear, and contradiction. You're allowing them. And once that happens, momentum builds. This is where life starts to feel like it's working with you, instead of against you. But to sustain this, you need one more shift. And that's what we're going into next. Everything you experience in your life is filtered through identity. Not your goals, not your plans, not even your actions, your identity. It's the silent system running in the background, deciding what feels normal, what feels possible, and what feels out of reach. And here's the truth most people avoid. You are not limited by reality. You are limited by what you believe is like you. Let that sink in, because this is where real transformation happens. If success doesn't feel like you will subconsciously push it away. If abundance feels unfamiliar, you will find ways to lose it. If confidence feels unnatural, you will shrink back into comfort. Not because you want to fail, but because your identity is trying to stay consistent. Consistency equals safety for the mind, even if that consistency keeps you stuck. So if you want to change your life, you don't start by changing your circumstances. You start by updating your identity. Now here's how identity actually works. It's built from repeated thoughts, emotional patterns, and past experiences. Over time, these patterns form a self-image. I'm the kind of person who struggles. I'm the kind of person who overthinks. I'm the kind of person who never gets lucky. And once that identity forms, reality organizes around it, not because it's true, but because it's familiar. So the question becomes, how do you change identity? Not by forcing new beliefs, but by creating new evidence. This is where small aligned actions become powerful. Every time you act in a way that matches your future self, you send a signal to your mind. This is who I am now, and with repetition, that signal becomes stable. For example, if you want to become confident, you don't wait until you feel confident. You start acting with small moments of courage, speaking up one risk, making one bold decision. Each action rewires your identity. This is how transformation becomes real, not through intensity, but through consistency. Now let's connect this back to the quantum level. Your identity is your baseline frequency. It's the default signal you're broadcasting when you're not consciously thinking. So even if you visualize success for 10 minutes, if your identity contradicts it for the other 23 hours and 50 minutes, the dominant signal wins. That's why people feel stuck. Not because manifestation doesn't work, but because their baseline frequency is misaligned. So the goal is simple: raise your baseline, not temporarily, but permanently. And this happens through 3 layers: awareness, repetition, embodiment. First, you become aware of your current identity. You notice your patterns, your reactions, your default thoughts, not to judge them, but to understand them. Second, you introduce new patterns, new thoughts, new behaviors, new emotional responses, not perfectly, but consistently. And third, you embody the change. This is the moment where it stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like you. This is where alignment locks in. Now here's something powerful. Your environment also plays a role in identity. The people you listen to, the content you consume, the conversations you engage in, all of it reinforces a certain version of you. So if you stay in the same environment, you reinforce the same identity. This is why growth sometimes feels uncomfortable, because you're stepping out of what's familiar into what's possible. And that gap feels uncertain. But that uncertainty is not a warning. It's a sign of expansion. Now remember this: you don't need to become someone completely different. You just need to reveal the version of you that already exists, but hasn't been fully expressed yet. Because that version is real. It's already in the field. It's already available. And the more you align with it, the more your reality reflects it. This is the final layer of the emerald signal. It's not about chasing something outside of you. It's about activating something within you. And once that activation happens, everything changes. Not all at once, but inevitably. There comes a point in every transformation where everything becomes quiet. Not because nothing is happening, but because everything is finally aligning beneath the surface. This is the point most people misunderstand. They expect constant signs, constant movement, constant validation from the outside world. But real alignment doesn't feel loud. It feels certain. It feels calm. It feels like something has already been decided, even if you can't yet see the physical proof. And this is where the final shift happens, the one that separates those who truly change their reality from those who keep circling the same patterns. You stop looking for confirmation outside of you, and you start trusting what you've already activated within. Because by now, if you've stayed with this message, something has already changed in you. The way you think, the way you observe yourself, the way you interpret your reality, it's not the same as it was before you started. And that's the signal completing its cycle. Not by giving you something new, but by revealing what was always available to you once you became aware enough to see it. This is what people call the point of no return. Not because you can't go back, but because even if you try, it won't feel the same anymore. Old patterns will feel heavier. Old doubts will feel more obvious. Old limitations will feel like something you're choosing rather than something you're trapped in. And that awareness alone changes everything, because now responsibility shifts back to you. Not in a stressful way, but in an empowering one. You begin to realize that your state is the starting point of every outcome, that your identity is shaping every interaction, and that your expectations are quietly directing the path your life takes. And once you see that, you stop giving your power away to circumstances, to timing, to luck, or to other people's opinions. You begin to operate from a different place entirely, a place where you understand that alignment is not something you visit occasionally, it's something you live from consistently. And consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means returning to awareness again and again, even when you slip, even when you doubt, even when you feel off track. Because those moments don't cancel your progress. They reveal where you still have room to stabilize your identity at a higher level. And as you continue doing this, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. Your reactions slow down, your decisions become clearer, your energy becomes more focused, and the external world begins to mirror that internal clarity in ways that feel almost effortless. Opportunities begin to show up in ways that don't require force. Conversations begin to unfold in ways that feel natural. Ideas begin to come to you at the right time without overthinking. And it won't feel like something extraordinary is happening. It will feel like things are finally working the way they should have all along. This is when you know the shift is real. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer the same person reacting to everything the same way. You have stepped into a different baseline. And from that baseline, different results are inevitable. Now here's the most important part to understand as this message comes to an end. Nothing you heard here works if it stays as information. It only works when it becomes something you live, something you embody, something you return to daily without needing to be reminded. Because the emerald signal was never meant to be something you depend on. It was meant to activate something within you so that you no longer need external triggers to remember who you are becoming. And that's why this message does not repeat. Not because it disappears, but because once you integrate it, you move beyond the version of yourself that needed to hear it in this way. You evolve into someone who naturally thinks, feels, and acts from alignment without needing constant guidance. And from that point forward, life becomes less about searching and more about expressing. Expressing your ideas, your vision, your potential, your presence in a way that feels authentic and grounded. You stop asking if it's going to happen, and you start moving like it already is. You stop hesitating, and you start trusting your internal signals. You stop waiting for the perfect moment, and you start recognizing that the moment you're in is already enough to begin. And as simple as that sounds, that is the difference between a life that feels delayed and a life that feels directed. So as you leave this message, don't look for something dramatic to prove that it worked. Don't look for instant transformation or overnight change. Instead, pay attention to the subtle shifts, the way you carry yourself, the way you respond to challenges, the way you think about your future. Because those small changes are not small at all. They are the foundation of a completely different reality taking shape. And the more you honor those shifts, the faster everything else aligns around them. This is how the process completes itself. Not through force, not through pressure, but through steady alignment with who you are becoming. So take one last moment and recognize this clearly. You were not here by accident. You were not meant to hear this at a random time. This moment, this awareness, this shift, it all happened at the exact point where you were ready to receive it. And now the next step is yours. Not to chase something new, but to walk forward with what you already understand at a deeper level. Because the signal has already done its job. It reached you, you recognized it, and now it becomes part of you.